Hi, this is PA Camping Dad, Doogie. I'm going to show you how I make up the continuous ridgeline with Dutchware for a tarp over a hammock. I'll zoom in a minute and show the details. The first step is to get yourself some Lash-it or Zing-it. What I prefer, it's really what the Dutchware was designed to work with, and I cut myself continuous ridgeline of 34 feet, and I added a few inches. I think it's 34 feet 8 inches is what I went with this time. Leave me enough room to leave me with a full 34 feet after the splices are put in. And so what we're going to do is we're going to splice on a Dutch hook. I'll zoom in later. Tiny little piece of titanium, and that's going to be permanently attached onto the continuous ridgeline. And the only parts then, in this case, I'm also connecting this with a stinger, another piece of Dutchware. You can also use a tarp fly, one of his tarp flies, and I'll show you how that would be done too. It just requires doing one more continuous loop. With the stingers, all you need is a Dutch hook and one small continuous loop and the ridge line. If you want to do it with a tarp fly, you'll need a second continuous loop. At least that's how I do it. And let's zoom in and see what it looks like. So, see here my bundle of ridge line that I've already trimmed, and the two ends are just laid out there. One end, actually both ends, I have marked at 1.5 inches, and the other end, one of the ends, I additionally mark at 4 inches and at 5.5. So I've done those marks, just put tiny dots on the Dyneema, on the Zing-it, and that will be the 1.5 inch spot is where we're going to pull a couple threads out and taper the end. We'll do that on both ends, and that makes a better splice and a smooth transition. And then the other two marks will be used for the locked brummel. And I'll put some links to a locked brummel and a continuous loop pictorial examples in hammock forums. So the first thing we need to do is taper the ends. See how good the focus ends up here. The way that you taper an end is first you push the rope together to make it expand and expose the bundles of fibers. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pick out 2 bundles of fibers and pull them out. So in this case, the tool I'm using is a folded over piece of guitar string. I believe this happens to be a B string, but it doesn't really matter. Obviously you don't want to have the wound ones, you just want a smooth piece of wire. People use florist wire. My aging eyesight, I have to get in here pretty close. So I've slid the folded over piece of guitar string under one of the bundles of fibers, and then I'll just work that a little bit until it starts to come out. Pinch it with my fingernails, get a good hold on it, and pull it out from the end. See how it bunches up as it There's a little resistance. I saw it come off the end there. Pull one out. And just do that again with another bundle of fibers. A little easier now that there's a little more space in there. Again, just wiggle it a little to get a little bump in the fibers coming out so I can get a hold of it. Let's get a hold of it. Just pull it out. So you want to do that to both ends. And when we do the continuous loop, we will do the same to both ends of the piece that we'll make into a continuous loop. Then we just trim off those scraps as close as possible to the rope with a very sharp knife. I found that scissors just don't work, and I need to sharpen this blade a little. And repeat that for both ends. And that's how you taper the ends. So I'll repeat that on the other end of the continuous ridge line. Okay, I have both ends of my ridge line of the 34-foot piece of ridge line tapered, and it's time to put the locked Brummel splice in. So you see this end, I have a mark at 4 inches and a mark at 5.5. I'm going to push together the Zing-it to expand it and make it so I can have access to the gaps between the bundles. And you start at the furthest in mark, the 5.5-inch mark, and insert your splicing tool, whatever you've decided to use. It'd be difficult to do it on camera. And you want to make sure that you bisect the rope. And hopefully you can see that went straight through. And now I'm going to grab the near end that we just tapered, open up my loop a little bit, stick it in there, and pull it through. Just takes a little getting used to how to wiggle it, and the more you do it, the easier it becomes. Now if you saw there, I kind of put my fingernails on either side and support the edges. Now you want to, actually, what you don't want to do is do what I just did. Because the one special part about this, sorry about that, camera bump, is that we want to have a Dutch hook in here. So before we do this, we want to put our Dutch hook and have it in between the two marks. We'll repeat this. It's a lot easier once you've opened up the fibers. Put our splicing tool through. Feed the end through there. Pull it on through. Now you don't have to worry about pulling it too far, but you want to get that your first mark, the mark that was at 4 inches, you want to pull that through. Now we want to expand that spot, because we're going to put our splicing tool through here again. Now this time we want to insert it in this direction, because we're going to be pulling the other end of the 34 feet through that hole. So let me get it turned right here. And insert it through. And the other end, which I've already tapered, gets fed through. Again, the fingernails on either side, giving it a little wiggle. Seems to work real easy for me. And I'm going to pause it while I pull 34 feet of cord through. Okay, so this is the 34 feet going onto the floor. And now you want to tighten this up all the way. And if you just pull on your loop and you want it, pull it all the way down very snug so it locks into itself. That's the lock part of the Brummel. And now we'll just, this gets buried into the Dyneema here, or Zing-it, Lash it, whatever you want to call it. They're Dyneema fibers. The one thing is, you don't want to just start right here with your bury, because although it looks like it'll cover it, once you expand this, one of the tricks I learned is to walk down through the whole part that you're going to bury and push it and expand it, and it will be considerably shorter when it's expanded. So you need to make sure that you have enough. Start your fishing your bury out further down. If you start it further, it's no big deal, it'll just close up later. But if you don't start it down the rope far enough, you won't bury the whole thing, and you'll have to try to fish it in again. It's much easier if you just get it far enough the first time. So normally what I do is I expand it so that it's already shrunk some, and then I give it another couple inches extra. And this is probably going to be difficult to show, but so then what you do is you take your fishing tool, and it would be good if it was a little longer than this one, but I broke my string a few times and I don't have another one right now, so this has been working for me for the berries. Whoopee sling gets a little tougher if I'm doing a UCR, but so you see we expanded it down about 2 inches or so past the berry, past where I think it's going to end. And now we're just going to insert my tool inside the Dyneema, the Zing-it. It's just a matter of opening up one of those gaps and feeding it in. Once it gets in there, especially if you've pre-expanded it, just push it on up, keeping it. Found it helps if you support the rope as you push it. If you let it flop, it'll tend to come back out somewhere. I just feed it on up. Hopefully I'm still in frame. So I do have some bends at the end of this too, where I can kind of holds it on when I can really get some compression going on this and pack more rope into a smaller spot. It doesn't come out on me. At least most of the time it doesn't. A lot more difficult trying to do it and keeping it in frame than it is just to do it. So what I'm trying to do is work it all the way up to where our two pieces intersected with the lock part of the Brummel. And we want it to come out as close as possible to the inside there. I'm hoping this is in focus. But there it came out. And I've got it kind of bunched up in my hand. So now you just take your tapered end and feed it through your loop. And now comes the part that requires a little patience. But I haven't had too much trouble with this. You need to work the end until it gets in. Once you get the fold in past your inside the fibers, then it goes quite easy. Yeah, sorry for the dog barking there. So just keep tension on it and wiggling it, rolling it back and forth. Get your fingernails to gently grab the outer casing of it. I found that really helps a lot. Give it a little wiggle. Like I said, once it gets in there, it goes quite easy. Here it comes. That little fingernail wiggle really works for me. It's hanging up here a little bit. Just a little pinch and roll. Hopefully. Just working it out. Trying to do it slowly and carefully so I don't pull off the end, and there it comes. And that's what we're waiting for, is it to come out there. And now give it you want to pull this all the way in. So it disappears in there. And now just milk it back. And if you went far enough, it'll suck all the way in. And that is your finished end of your continuous ridge line with a Dutch hook on it. The other end of the ridge line we will just finish with a berry. Just, you can't really tie knots in this rope, so I just will bury it back on itself. I normally just figure out roughly, here's my mark where I started my taper, so I definitely want that to be buried a little bit. So if we bury down to here, that'll be good. So what we're going to effectively do is bury this in on itself. So I'll start expanding it here. I'm still in frame. Yeah. So I'll start expanding it here. This is where I'll come out. You could mark this if you want, but it's not that critical. It's just for dressing it up, looking clean and not fraying. So see, I've expanded it there. So let's go another inch maybe. It's not that long of a berry, so I think this will be pretty good. And repeat what we did before. Feed your splicing tool, whatever it may be, into the center of the fibers. Work it all the way up to where you want to have the end of your rope be. And this one's a little easier. Just come out anywhere. Really doesn't matter where. Feed your end through. Sorry, I'm probably blocking it a little bit. I don't think I quite had enough in my loop there. That looks better. See if I'm still in frame. And as before, a little tension on it, a little twisting and turning. And I definitely find if you can just gently get your fingernails on the outside, you don't want to pinch it. Really helps a lot. I can feel it going in. There it goes. In this case, we're just going to pull it in all the way until it buries itself. I'm going to try to grab it with my fingernail at the tip. Give it a good pull so that we have a nice smooth end. Press that down as nice as possible and milk it back. And that's our finished ridgeline. Next, we need to have a continuous loop for the Dutch hook to hook into. I have an 18-inch piece of Dyneema here, just barely out of frame. And I have already tapered both ends, had marks at 1.5. In this case I put a mark at 4 inches on each one, which is somewhere online I found the amounts that you're supposed to do berries for, and I think it was 3.8 inches for this cord, so I do it at 4. So what we're going to do here is very similar to what we did with the lock Brummel. We're going to expand both of these spots at 4 inches, insert our wire through, it's just a lot easier to do it not in the camera. Insert our wire through and pull the opposite end through it. And then we're going to do, this time we don't pull the mark through, but now we're going to do it again, where we're going to insert through this end and pull the opposite end through. And so in this case too, I want to go through in a direction that allows us to pull the other end through easily. Doesn't really matter that much because you can spin it. So we're going to pull this end through that one. Now if you are doing this with tarp flies and not a stingers. What you would do is you need 2 of these continuous loops then, and one of them you will put the tarp fly in the loop before you construct the loop, and then that gets lark's headed onto one end of the tarp. This will go on the other end of the tarp for the Dutch hook. So you definitely need 1 continuous loop for the Dutch hook end, and the other end you can either have a tarp flies with a continuous loop or a stinger which has the carabiner. So we pull that one through, and now we just pull that tight, and that's going to be our loop. And what we finish this off by burying each of these, just like we did with the locked Brummel. And this is about as small as a loop as you can make. I started with 18 inches of cord here because this will pretty much, I'll go exactly opposite and expand one way, pull it through, and do the same with the other side. And we'll see how close it comes to meeting at the end. But I think it's going to be within an inch. I wouldn't want to trim it any tighter. So let me get to the bury and I'll be back. So now I've walked all the way around the loop and expanded the fibers to make it easier to work with. And you see it got significantly smaller in diameter. But the good news is we're not coming to halfway. So we'll start at halfway. Work our way inside the fibers again. Just like we did before. So, and then when you get down to the end, if we're going to be pulling this one in here, because that's the one going this way, we want to come out on the side that is on. Make sure you don't have a twist in it. Fight me. Trying to open up the loop on camera. There it goes. It definitely helps to start it, compacting it, the bend, fold back as good as you can. We're moving now. Feel it working down. And we're out. So then you just want to pull it all the way in. And that's half of the continuous loop. Just gonna milk it down. And we'll do it again. Again, just make sure that we give it enough extra room to make sure we can bury it all the way. And there we have a continuous loop. And what that is used for, that gets attached to one end of the tarp. Don't have a tarp right here, but we'll use a pair of scissors to represent the D-ring for your tarp. What I like to do is, as I guessed, I have about an inch. I have about an inch here that is just a straight dynamo with no bury in it. So I want that to be the outside of my loop. Feed this through. Scissors I'm pretending is the D-ring on your tarp, and you lark's head like that, and that's where your Dutch hook will clip into. Am I in frame? I'm not in frame. That's where your Dutch hook clips into. So really 18 inches is the smallest that you can do the continuous loop, and that ends up being approximately a 5-inch long loop before the lark's head. And that is how you set up your tarp. Now the other end would go to a stingers, as seen in my other video. So the stingers can clip onto your ridge line, your D-ring of your tarp, and then you just loop your rope through it, and once you tension it up, you lock it off like that, and it's not going anywhere. The other method that I used on my tarps is I didn't use the stingers. I had the tarp flies, and basically instead of the carabiner, I spliced a continuous loop with the tarp flies on it, and lark's headed that onto the end of my tarp. Those are the two ways you can do it. I hope that helps you. Get out there and have fun.